This is Silver Bullion. I'm your host today, James Cox. We've got a special guest today, that's Max Wright. Max is the co-founder of the Success Council. Max, it's a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Thank you for having me, it's my pleasure.
Max, you became interested in the gold and silver world approximately 10 years ago. How did that come about?
Yeah, actually I misled you before I said 10 years ago. It's probably about 15. I was in my early 20s, the internet had just arrived. I was there in Australia and I just had the internet. It was dial-up. I don't think YouTube wasn't around, so we didn't even have video.
Okay.
And I downloaded an audio from a gentleman named G. Edward Griffin, who I later on discovered was the author of a book called The Creature from Jekyll Island.
Okay.
And he talked about the Federal Reserve, the banking system. And it's funny, I remember being like in high school economics and asking my teacher questions like, where did money come from? And I never got satisfactory answers. And so I'd forgotten about the topic. This was several years later. I was in my early 20s now, and I found this audio. I was describing this is where money comes from, and here are the ups and downs and challenges of that. And so I was immediately fascinated. And then I kind of lost that path because I was a young kid with no money, so it didn't really matter what I thought about anything. So I kind of ignored it for a little while. I got into it, I learned about it, then ignored it for about 10 years, went away and made my mark in the world with several other businesses. And then more recently, in the last 5 years, I've started delving into it a lot more. I now have a little bit of money that's worth protecting and worth growing and things like that. And so understanding how to allocate my capital to where it's going to be preserved in the case of let's say some economic strife, which I do believe is on the horizon, and even growing that during that time is something that obviously I'm excited about, and I think probably everybody who has something worth protecting should be.
Okay, interesting answer. Then, during your time as an entrepreneur, the last couple of decades, you've learned a lot about how the world works, business, economic cycles, etc. You seem to have come down to a belief that there is something fundamentally wrong and fragile about the current system. Could you expand on that?
Sure. Something that most people don't realise, and there's a good reason for it, but we're just not taught it, we don't learn this in school, is that the current financial system is built on trust. The solutions in our world are very centralised, and in order for us to make payments around the world, we trust that there will be banks and fiduciaries along the way who will hold our money, transport our money, do wise things with it, and they give us an interest rate sometimes when our money is in the bank. And so that means that in order for them to do that, that means they're making money with our money somehow. So they're going ahead and investing it in places. In addition to that's a kind of a level of risk right there. Someone has control of our money. Someone's, let's say, is investing with our money and playing with our money in the hopes of getting a great return, and then they're going to give us a small percentage back as an interest rate. There's one level of risk. Another level of risk above that is we have the actual currency itself, which is produced by governments, and then there's what backs that up. And basically what backs up a currency is the government's ability to stay solvent and to take wealth from the citizens to pay back to all this money that is borrowed. Something that most people don't know is that all money is debt. Now, that's not the way it always has been, but all fiat currency is debt, and it has to be paid back with interest, and the way that it survives is for government's ability to extract taxes from us and pay that debt back. If that system hiccups in any way, then that can send tremors through the financial system, and we are now more than ever interlocked, and so the contagion from very small breakdowns in that protocol and in that trust can accelerate very, very quickly. And we can see a small spark create big sparks in the financial sector. And that's kind of what we saw in 2008. Okay. And that was, in the nip of time, that was kind of bailed out. And will that be bailed out in the next time around? Who knows? Will the problem be too big for it to be bailed out? Who knows? Will the same solution, a bailout, work again next time, even if the problem is just the same? Who knows? And so there's enough signs around there which I think there's enough fragility in the system whereby small sparks can have big consequences in a lack of trust in the system. And as I said at the beginning, the whole system is built on trust. And once that trust goes, there'll be some serious ramifications.
Okay, so if the system's all built on trust, and at the very fundamental level, it's trusting governments to stay solvent, you seem to doubt that's going to be true in the future.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, there's lots of different reasons for that, but we can see, just look at the balance sheets of governments, and we can see that their debts are climbing.
Yep.
All around the Western world, the major economies, their debts are climbing. And we also see that from a demographics position, we also see that the demographics are aging. So these people are kind of moving into retirement. So they're going to start wanting to get what they're called their entitlements back. In different countries it's called different things, but basically their retirement pensions. They're also going to start sucking money out of the stock exchange. They've been putting money into stocks and saving for their retirement for decades, and now they're going to retirement. They start sucking that money back out. And again, all these things weigh up to more uncertainty, and that lack of fragility means that can be widely have contagiousness across the whole system.
Okay, so you're looking at a scenario in the future in which there is a contraction of all this trust and something going wrong with the currencies. How is it that gold and silver is relevant to that story?
Gold and silver is relevant because it's trustless. Okay. That's a critical component, and it's why we've seen that many times throughout history that there's been experiments in different kinds of money, different kinds of things. But what we do with 5,000 years of history, precious metals have often been the place that people come back to because they are a trustless environment. If you have the lump of metal in your hand, there is no other third parties that you need to trust. Compare that to, say, holding dollars. If you hold these pieces of paper in your hand, again, the pieces of paper intrinsically are worth zero. It's the promise of the government behind it that gives it value. So if there's a flutter, a nervousness, any kind of, I'm calling them hiccups with that government in terms of their financial stability, then we know that those pieces of paper can return to their intrinsic value of zero. Whereas precious metals cannot. You are not reliant on anybody else. And we've seen it many times where it's not like a far-out thought. In the last century, there's been scores and scores of governments going to hyperinflation, and those pieces of paper become worthless because the financials of the government backing it up became worthless.
Okay. What would you say to people who agree with what you have to say, your analysis, and they want to make a bet that this is going to happen, and they go ahead and start buying paper, gold and silver because the premiums are lower, it's maybe more liquid, you can get in and out faster. It seems like the way to go. What words of caution would you say on that?
Yeah, well, with regards to that, you put yourself back in the environment of trust. You've left the trustless environment of the cold hard metal, and you've gone into the trust environment, and now you're having a piece of paper which is representing the metal. And if that metal is there or not there, that depends on whether or not you get it. So no longer are you in a trustless environment. And I would say we have enough evidence now to say that the ETFs and the funds that claim to have the metal on hand, and even by their own terms and conditions, do not have enough metal on hand to back up their promises. And so that will mean that customers ultimately will get left holding the bag.
Okay, so you're looking at a situation in the future in which gold and silver do go up in value, dramatically perhaps, and yet there are many people who were expecting some sort of MF global event whereby they thought they were up 10%, 20%, but actually they're left with some IOUs from a company that no longer exists.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, these are pieces of paper which track the price of gold but are not the precious metals themselves, and they track that price of gold based on trust. And so again, if that trust is broken, if the financials of those companies are exposed or are shown to be in an unsatisfactory way or an insolvent way, then those pieces of paper become worthless. And only the physical precious metals will protect a customer in that instance.
Okay, and you're giving advice to the people who follow your blog and read your articles at the Success Council about all of this. Could you tell us a little bit about the background of the Success Council, how it started, where it is now?
Okay, yeah, Success Council started recently, like a couple of years ago, and it was myself and a number of friends who had the same belief system. We saw the writing on the wall in the same way, and we just wanted to protect ourselves, and that's how it started.
Okay.
And so we went on a massive educational journey in learning the different aspects to protecting yourself in that environment, which led us to the path of gold and silver. And then once we're in that path, which led us into the details and the nuances, which is, we just talked about the difference between paper gold, physical gold, and there's many, many other aspects that are worth considering. And at the end of that process, we realized that we had a tremendous level of knowledge and help, and we were being interviewed, things like this, people were asking us what to do, and we were like, well, okay, why don't we just create a website which teaches people all about that? And so we have a website, which means we don't have to say the same thing 10,000 times. Now we only do it 100 times.
Sounds very helpful.
Yes.
Max, if people wanted to find out more about the Success Council, where do they go?
If they go to successcouncil.com, we do lots of free reports there, which I would suggest you start with that. And if you enjoy those and you like our style, think we convey good information, you can always go ahead and purchase some of our products, which is the more advanced levels of gold and silver investing.
Sounds fantastic. Max, thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you.